Good news can often get overlooked or buried by the negative in our everyday lives. So let's change that. I'm Adrianna.
And I'm Wyatt.
We're just two ordinary people without any special qualifications or anything, trying to navigate life. We invite you to join us as we share wholesome stories, news articles of hope, and ideas about how we can all make the world just a little bit brighter. We are uplifting positive stories. Welcome back to another episode of Uplifting Positive Stories. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, now we're into February, so hopefully everyone's had a good first month of 2025.
Yeah, how are those
hopefully
New
it's
Year's
going
resolutions
good.
holding up? Is everybody still on the train doing, I feel like that's the joke is February is when those start kind of falling off and stuff, but gotta keep going. We gotta keep pushing,
Hopefully by this point, because we recorded this a couple weeks in advance, hopefully you're still keeping up with your Duolingo by then.
It's been really fun, actually. If anyone is looking to learn, this is not sponsored by them, but if anyone is listening and was wanting to learn a new language in this year, Duolingo is a really fun app. I'm really enjoying it. They kind of gamify learning a language in a way. And so it's very fun. And it can be sometimes even a little addictive. It's very cool. But it's like, I don't mind being addicted to this. I'm learning something. So it's cool.
It does get a little funny, aggressive in a funny way sometimes. When it's like, hey, it starts like dinging and notifying. You're like, hey, are you going to do it?
You're about to lose your streak. Because you get like a day streak. Yeah, it's really funny. They also have you're in the Sapphire League, or after you earn so many points, you get into certain different leagues, and it's like you're about to drop out of the Sapphire League. Go on now so you don't lose your spot. It's very
sounds like a Pokemon.
They try to make it kind of competitive, which is really funny to me. But it's really fun. So if you're looking to learn a new language, I recommend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so hopefully all those New Year's resolutions y'all have made are all still going strong.
I'm doing so well. I haven't even started yet at my resolution.
Well, there's still 11 months left, so you got lots of time.
That's kind of how last year happened with 1 became 2, became 3, became 12, and now we're in the next year.
Hey, no, it happens. It happens. All right. Well, today's podcast episode is all about not being afraid to ask for help. I feel like as a society, we kind of make it so it is very hard to ask for help in some ways. We kind of are like, no, just, persevere through it. Be strong.
Be self-sufficient.
Be independent. Figure it out yourself. That's kind of the mentality, but that's not always a very healthy mentality. I don't think so.
Maybe to a certain extent.
It can be to some extent, but
like many things on this podcast, like in life, it's about balance.
It's about balance. It's about moderation. And yeah. And so I always want to preface, we are not experts. We are not mental health experts. We are not experts in any of this kind of stuff. So we are all just giving our opinions and our views on these stories. So take it with a grain of salt. Take it however you want to take it. But this is just kind of an interesting topic that I thought would be kind of interesting to talk about. So with that, we will start with the first story that comes from the subreddit Ask Reddit, which the top question was, what's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger? So here we go. This just happened this past week. As a bartender in the midst of a pandemic, so this was back in 2020, my income has been practically nothing. I was talking with a coworker asking if I could do laundry at his house as my electric had been shut off for the past month. It got brought up that I owed over $600. The one person
just
sitting
for electric?
Well, probably over several months, not paying it.
Yeah. Dang.
The one person sitting at the bar closed his tab and left a $700 tip on the $10 bill. Left a cheeky little note saying, showering in the dark is dangerous. He never said a word to me, and I didn't see the tip until he was already gone. He was from out of town, so I'm assuming I will never see him again to thank him. I legit grown man cried at the end of my shift.
Dang. Yeah. That's super nice.
And the reason I picked this for this topic here is a perfect example of people don't know what you need unless you ask for help. And it's not like he asked somebody for $700. He didn't do that. But if he hadn't asked his coworker and been brave enough to be like, hey, can I do some laundry at your place? The guy would have never known that he needed that. And there would have been no opportunity to help him in that area that he needed help, So it's a good example of that, I feel like. That sometimes if you need help, people might have no idea that you are struggling with something. And so just putting that out there, I can't tell you the number of times where I've seen people post on Facebook being like, hey, I am running out of money for the month and because of a health expense or whatever it is. And if anybody would be willing to help me front me some money, I can pay you back once I get paid on a certain day. And a lot of people jump in and are willing to help, but it is really hard to admit something like that, because as a society, we almost view it as like an embarrassing thing to ask for money, or an embarrassing thing to ask for help with these kind of things when we're struggling. And I don't think we should feel that way.
Or like was it your story, or was it a story you found with a server who had their
was
stuff?
my story.
I thought
that was
a coworker.
There was a worker. This was in a very early episode. This was like our second or third episode we ever recorded. But there was a story where one of our servers had a pouch of money from their tips that they'd earned from the past week. We had a little cubby area to put our stuff in, and it was pretty common knowledge that, anybody can go in there, so you probably shouldn't leave a lot in there, but this person had forgotten and left it in there, and so it got stolen. And it was several $100s worth of tips, which was going to go towards his rent. And yeah, he told people what happened and asked for help to figure out if anybody could return it, if, hopefully someone would have a change of heart and put it back. And they didn't, but all of the servers rallied around and got his money back. We all put a little bit of our tips into the fund until he got recovered what he needed for his rent. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so another example there of, if you don't tell somebody of a problem you're facing, no one's going to know, and there's not an opportunity for people to help. So sometimes with this kind of stuff, it's important to be open, even if it is kind of embarrassing in the moment, to ask for that help if you really need it,
Yeah.
So yeah, cool example of that. And wow, $700 tip. That's crazy. That's amazing. So, all right. So this next story comes from the Ask Reddit subreddit, and it is titled, "What heartwarming story do you have to share that could cheer up someone who's feeling down right now?" So that was the question, and someone posted this. "I've been having a super rough time lately. Budding alcoholism, anxiety, stomach aches constantly, crying myself to sleep. My parents are on the other side of the pond, so they could only do so much to help. After a bad video call with them that I had to end early because I started crying again, my dad sent me a super long text pouring his heart out to me, how he'd struggled with alcohol in uni as well, how he nearly failed out of his second year, like I've been stressing over myself, how he missed out on some of his dreams because of circumstances outside of his control. A couple of the lines in his message left me tearing up. If you decide to come home, we're here for you, we love you, and we're proud of you. You really are stronger than you believe. Gut this out and you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. Don't give up on your dream because life is crappy right now. This too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it'll pass. I love you so much and I'm proud of you, whatever you decide. Today I finished packing up my dorm and I'll be turning in my last final essay of the year." I love the line there, "This too shall pass. It may pass like a kidney stone, but it'll pass." I think that's a really, I haven't heard that before. I think that's a really poignant way of saying that, because it's true. Like, it'll pass. And that's something that in really hard times, not in that way, I haven't thought of it in that specific way, but in times where I'm really stressed about something, I'm like, time's going to keep marching on. If I'm stressed about something, it'll keep marching on. And before I know it, it'll be over. And I'll be looking back on it instead of looking forward to it in anxiety. And that has helped me through times when I've been stressed or having a hard time with something and struggling with something. So I love that the dad here pointed that out and kind of put it into perspective for his son. I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, I just thought that was really awesome. But again, if we don't tell people what we're struggling with, they can't offer up that advice. And so, especially with things like alcoholism and anxiety and things like that, I think it's really important to make connections with people and be open about those struggles, because as long as, of course, with the right people, because some people aren't as supportive as others. But if you have somebody that you're close with that you think could support you, being willing to be vulnerable and let them know about these things gives them that opportunity to step up and help you out and maybe offer some advice or help you in the way that you need help. And so, yeah, I just thought that was a really good example. And again, every person's different, every situation's different, but in general, I think being willing to be vulnerable is helpful sometimes. So, yeah. All right, on to our next one here. So this one is from Best of Positive Updates, and it was originally posted on the Girl Survival Guide. And it is titled, "I think I'm depressed, but I can't stop lying about it." Here we go.
I feel like there might be some ways we can relate to this potentially, just from the title,
right?
Because sometimes it's hard to admit when things are
hard.
Are going a little tough or rough.
So here we go. It says, every day I fight the urge to stay in bed. At work, I fight the urge to go home early. When I get home, I don't want to do anything. I took the day off yesterday, said I was having stomach problems, which wasn't true. Everything feels like it's so difficult or will take so much energy to do, even though logically I know that's not the case. Everything just seems exhausting. I still get up and do what I have to, but it takes so much energy. Tomorrow is my birthday, and I just don't want to do anything. When people ask how I am, I say I'm good and I smile. I feel like they're not able to tell. I always encourage others to seek help for mental health issues, but for some reason I can't deal with it myself, which makes me feel like a hypocrite. So that was the original post, to which they updated September 15th. So almost a week later, not quite a week. Here we go. Update. Depressed and lying about it. I told a friend, requested a doctor appointment, and made a lot of cookies, and I feel a little bit better. Thank you. Thank you for all the kind words. I literally didn't expect any response and not even really sure why I posted, but I really, really appreciate anybody who responded. Just the thought that that many people took time out of their day to say something gives me hope. Don't underestimate what a few kind words can do. I especially was surprised that someone said my post caused them to call their doctor for help. That's probably what pushed me the most to do something, hoping this may help someone else too. Obviously, I'm not cured or anything, but I definitely took some important steps I otherwise would not have.
Yeah, I mean, healing and recovery of that sense is never, well, I wouldn't say never, but it's rarely a linear path, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
With one solution.
I love that this was an anonymous post that somebody made, and strangers went out of their way to post encouraging words and to relate. And I think when we do open up when we need help with something and we're like, hey, I'm struggling. In this case, I'm not wanting to, everything feels like it's taking more energy than it logically should. Being able to be vulnerable about that, it puts it out there and other people will most likely relate, because I think it's very possible that more people are struggling with it than you realize deep down. And so by putting it out there, we find people that relate, and then through that we can help each other out, because they may also be struggling to ask for help, and they may also feel like they're the only one that feels that way. And so by putting it out there, you might be surprised at how many people actually feel that way. And so I thought that was a really cool example of that, and by doing that, they got something, a little stepping stone that helped them feel a little bit better. Obviously, like they said, they're probably not cured or anything, but it just helped them in that moment to take a little step to feel a little bit better. So, and I've seen a lot of posts like that on Reddit, where people have made posts saying, hey, I feel really depressed, or I'm struggling with anxiety, or the world seems really dark right now. And other people have come and been like, hey, yeah, I feel like that too, and this is what I'm doing. Hope that helps. Like, there's been a lot of examples that I've seen of that, and this was just one that I thought put it in really good words. So, yeah. Yeah, very powerful.
Yeah, so. It definitely helps to have a support system, and it's such a struggle. It really depends on like what it is that you're dealing with.
Right.
You know, like I know back when I used to work more in TV news, one thing I struggled with being a chief photog at the time was I was kind of in a weird position of like I was working with reporters day and I was working with like the front line, like we're out on the part of the reporting team essentially, but I was also sort of in a managerial role of sorts. So I was but I wasn't like in like working in office manager position. Like it's weird where it's like I felt kind of alone a little bit, where I'm discouraged from, you know, ranting about things I'm struggling with the coworkers who I'm regularly working with, you know, and they're struggling with things too. And, you know, like I'm supposed to try to be like, no, it's all okay. It's all good. And I try to be a support system for them. But a lot of times I didn't have that same support system. I had you when I got home, but also I was working such inconsistent hours when I was barely home. I didn't have that for a while. And there were a few reporters out there I did confide in more than others, especially when I had established that kind of rapport before entering that kind of role. But it was tough, and I definitely didn't get to communicate my struggles I was having as much as I maybe would have liked to, or maybe should have. You know, it's kind of hard. You know, I know I got to see. Well, I'm glad I got to be that for, you know, because I did a lot of the driving, so it was a lot of like, you know, coming back from a hard live shot up in the field or something, reporters having a rough go of it, and just like talking through it, being that support for them. But, you know, I needed the support.
But not having it yourself.
Yeah, there was times where I was like at the station, like on the cusp of tears, like alone, like as I'm putting gear away or managing gear. And like, there was definitely some rough days. Not all the time. It was not super often, but there's some rough days there. And like,
It happens.
It's hard not having as much of a support system as you would like, or at least the appearance of it. I don't know. I didn't exactly go around, at least not initially. Maybe by the end I did a little bit more. I don't fully recall, a little bit of association when you're that stressed and that uncertain about the future and stuff. But it was cool to see how, like, reporters at the very least, at least a lot of reporters I'd worked with, like, support each other. Like, I know they had a few of them had like text group chains going, and they would start like texting about like how their live shots went and stuff, and they'd be supporting each other, and that was kind of cool to see because they were all going through the same stuff. They're dealing with the same difficulties in terms of like finding new stories and like that social challenges and stuff, and like running live shots and having tech things go wrong or not quite making deadlines or stories changing last second. There's a lot of moving elements, and to see them support each other as well, even when I wasn't involved with it, it was kind of always kind of nice to witness that kind of camaraderie and stuff.
Yeah, by sharing those things with each other kind of helps them to not feel alone, and that like I'm not the only one that feels this way, or I'm not the only one that's struggling here. Yeah, it definitely helps. So, but again, it's hard. It's hard to admit those things. It's hard to put yourself in a vulnerable place like that because you want to seem like you have it all together, and you want to seem like you know what you're doing, and that it's easy, right? So yeah. Update number 2.
Oh, that's right. We're still on the same story. Sorry. I didn't mean to completely derail that conversation.
No, that's great. That's awesome. So here we go. Update number 2, depressed and lying about it, spoke to the doctor, decided to start taking meds and going to the gym. I feel better and lost 10 pounds. If you need help, please talk to someone. Got a lot of responses last time, so I figured that I'd update again. About 2 months ago, I was feeling very depressed for a period of several months and finally decided to do something about it and see my doctor. After speaking with my doc, I decided to try medication, a low-dose SSRI. She recommended it because neither of us could really identify a trigger. Example, no breakup, family death, loss of job, etc. to cause a depression to come on relatively quickly and severely. I hadn't had a history of depression or any major life changes recently. At first, I had some mild side effects, mainly insomnia, jaw clenching, and weird dreams, but they all stopped within 4 weeks and was totally bearable. I think the medication is helping. It's hard to pinpoint or describe the difference exactly. They're not happy pills. I just find it easier to smile, and I don't wake up with the same sense of dread every morning. I realized I sing along to songs on the radio now, which I had stopped doing. It's easier to get up and do housework. I actually want to go to family/friend outings, things like that. I've also been working out 3 to 5 times a week, boot camp/circuit training workouts at a local gym. I had actually started it about a month before seeing the doc, and I still gained weight in that time. I was eating terribly since I didn't care about myself much. After a few weeks of the meds, I lost almost 10 pounds within a month, a healthy loss as I am considered overweight. I found myself eating healthier food as I actually care about myself more, don't feel as depressed, and don't want to feel sluggish when I know I have to work out the next morning. I like feeling stronger and accomplished after working out, which I never would have thought I would have enjoyed before. I've always been a very lazy, unsporty person, but once I got into the habit, it's just become a normal part of my day and I feel healthier overall. I still have a ways to go, and everyone's situation is totally different. Some people might need therapy or other types of treatment, or may need to try different meds before finding one that works, or meditation, or whatever. What has worked for me may be very different than what works for somebody else, but I am really, really, really glad that I decided to talk to my doctor when I felt like something was wrong. One thing that made it easier to tell the doc was opening up to one of my good friends first. Once I told one person, it made it easier to tell somebody else. If you are struggling, please talk to somebody about it, or take some steps towards self-care in that direction. It's hard, but so is feeling like crap all the time. So might as well go with the hard that it has hope. So, yeah.
Nice. Glad to hear the progress and stuff. And there is a lot of, it has different varying levels of effect on different people, but there's a lot of science to back up exercise being helpful for not just weight loss. There's definitely some, everyone's body is different a little bit, but there is a lot of science to back up the impact that exercise can have on your mental health if you go into the right mindset and the right habits. The earliest analogy I ever heard was it's like being stressed and anxious. It's like being chased by a bear. And if you're just sitting down while you feel you're being chased by a bear, your body's like having that same reaction, but you're not actually doing anything. So at least be active when you're feeling that kind of way. It helps work it out a little bit,
Yep.
There's definitely a lot more fanciful science out there that I can really provide
but that's a good way to put it, though, that I think makes sense. At least to me, it makes sense a lot. So
if nothing else, it's a temporary distraction, you know? Like I know when I do CrossFit sometimes, like you think I'm thinking about how like stressful work is sometimes if I'm like
if you're active,
if I'm
like, oh
trying
God,
to survive the workout, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like there's different varying levels. You can use it to like, you know, kind of put a pause on it, you know, like put a pin in that feeling or thought, and I can focus on exercising, you know, or if you're doing something a little bit more less intensive, like just like a light jog or something, you can still think about it, but now you're actively doing something. So it kind of helps keep the thoughts focused, and you're trying to do something physically productive while you're processing those thoughts. Like there's a lot of benefits out there. I'm glad to see that they're having a weight loss along with that. Granted, I'm sure diet's a big part of it. I know for me, like diet's very important to be able to lose weight. The exercise is great as well, but I definitely need the diet along with that to really see that kind of positive change, which I have seen, which is good.
Yeah.
But I know that kind of thing you got to find a little bit of positivity, like to be able to, or like it's hard to exercise when you're depressed.
100%.
Like, you know, I thought, and it takes time. Like when I left the TV station and stuff, it's still like another year or so before I started developing a consistent exercise routine, health routine. I couldn't, up until that point, the excuse had been, well, it's my job. I'm too busy, which was true. I was too busy. But then like after that period of time, I still wasn't doing it yet. That still took me another year to really like change course in that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, for sure. And I think it also is on top of finding that positivity to kind of spur that strength to be able to do that thing, because I think that's a big part of it, is finding that inner strength to do it, because it's very, very hard when you are feeling depressed or anxious. But also on top of that, I feel like it's one of those things where if you start prioritizing yourself and really paying attention to what things make me feel better and what things don't.
Yeah, it doesn't need to just be exercise. Exercise is just the kind of vehicle that I kind of jumped on here because I can relate to it, you know?
It's a huge one. And also, like, I follow somebody who I used to work with long way back, and I love that she talks about this a lot. Is she started really paying attention to what foods make me feel good and what foods kind of make me feel like crap. And it's one of those things, because you get that dopamine rush with sugar and stuff like that. So in the moment, it's like, this makes me feel great. But then later you start feeling like crap if you eat junk food all the time. And you're like, it really does. You get a crash and you start feeling like crap. And so starting to really notice those things, pay attention to those things, what things make me feel good, what things make me feel bad, and trying to kind of move that needle towards good a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's probably going to be really hard to make a huge drastic change, but even just starting to go a little bit closer on the scale towards good and start prioritizing yourself. And like they mentioned here, it was kind of like a self-care thing. Like I wasn't feeding myself healthy foods because I quite frankly wasn't prioritizing that. I wasn't prioritizing myself. I wasn't feeling good about myself. And I think trying really hard to sit down and be like, okay, what are some things that I know about myself that should in theory be healthier for me / make me feel better.
Well, it doesn't help that eating healthy, it takes a lot of effort.
Right.
Because most of those healthy foods require more prep. And if they don't require a lot of prep, they're definitely more expensive.
Right. That is hard.
They're very
it's
less
so hard.
Convenient. That is definitely
I know for me that's a really hard thing. Yeah.
I've had to cut back a little bit on like the amount of like healthy products that I like out there because they're just so expensive. And like, okay, like they're great products, and we're trying to be like fiscally responsible. I should probably like cut back a little bit on them. You know, it's hard. It's hard. Everything healthy is so expensive. Everything that's like it's not is so dang cheap. It's a weird balance to strike.
It is really hard.
I'd cut a little bit of slack. I'm like, oh, I just didn't care. I didn't care about myself.
But
society has made it hard. Society's made it hard because it's expensive and time consuming. And when you're not feeling good about yourself already, like, do you really want to dedicate extra time to it? You know?
Right. But it's more just like, okay, for example, like for me, this has been something I've been trying to work at, and I struggle. I go back and forth on the needle, like I just described, over and over again. But for me, I really like soda, but I know that it causes me to gain weight, and I feel icky kind of afterwards after like I drink a lot of soda. So I've been trying to kind of change that. I've found like hint water bottles, which are flavored still give me that little bit of flavor that I'm looking for, but I know that it's healthier than a can of soda. And so I know it'll make me feel better if I drink that than if I drink a can of soda. So I'm trying to kind of switch that out. It's just little conscious decisions like that it's like, okay, well, this is a little bit better than what I've been doing, and it will make me feel a little bit better in the long term if I do this. And it's just little steps like that, I think, is kind of what OP was mentioning a little bit in terms of the prioritizing self-care, of like taking care of yourself and making yourself a priority in that sense. But yes, it is really, really hard, and I go back and forth all the time of being healthy and then not being healthy and getting too overwhelmed by everything else going on in life and all that kind of stuff. So 100%. But and that's why therapy is so great, because every person is so different and everything that we struggle with is so different. Our vices are different, and therapy is such a great way to hone in on those things and find a plan for you that works really well, and options for you with your specific case and your specific things that you're struggling with, and to find little stepping stones for you that might help. In this case for OP, it maybe was exercise and stuff,
and
but it can be different for everybody else.
Not that there's medication involved as well,
right.
Which again, it's for some people, it's not for others. I'm glad it worked out for OP here. You know, that's where a licensed therapist a good therapist can help you figure out what the right course of action is for you. Right.
And I love too that OP mentioned that what made it easier to talk to the doctor was talking to a close friend first, because sometimes by breaking that barrier in yourself of being open about the struggle with somebody that is close to you and that you know is gonna be there for you and it's gonna listen, can really help to make it easier to then tell that to a stranger. Because I mean, at first a therapist or a doctor is going to be a stranger, and so it can make it feel less scary talking to somebody else if you have talked to somebody you're close with first about what you're dealing with. But yeah, again, we are not licensed therapists, we are not qualified in any way. These are just our thoughts on this story. So yeah, but I think it's important to talk about, because through dealing through these things, it can help life become a lot more hopeful and a lot more positive when we're all struggling with these different things and to different variabilities. So yeah, couple more stories here. This one we're going to just kind of plow through just because they're very positive. So this one comes from Casual Conversation. It is titled, "I hugged the pizza delivery guy because he needed it." Oh. Here we go. So I ordered a pizza for my wife and myself. Pretty standard fare. Delivery guy shows up. It's the wrong order. Pizza guy was a kid, maybe 20 years old, more likely 18 or 19. He apologized and left with a glum look on his face. About 20 minutes later, he showed back up with my order, and he just looked defeated. Initially, I had planned to give him a 20 and let him keep the change for the tip, but they discounted the order, and it was just shy of $10. There was a 10 spot sitting on the hutch by the front door, so I just handed him that and asked him to hang on for a second because I knew I have 5s in my wallet in the other room. But I guess he just assumed he wasn't getting a tip when I walked away from the door with the pizza. The kid walked back to his car while I wasn't looking. I guess he figured he was out of a tip. I go back to the door and see the kid getting into his car on the street, so I walk up this drive to the street and wave him back. "Hey, you're trying to leave without your tip?" I yelled to him, but he couldn't really hear me from inside the car, so he got out and met me at the top of the driveway. He asks, "Oh, was something else the matter?" Instead of answering his question, I asked him, "What's got you so glum, son?" Keep in mind, I'm a big guy with a beard and a belly, and I wear Bermuda shorts in the middle of Texas. Think
Santa
urban.
on vacation?
Yeah. Think urban.
Santa.
Santa. Think urban Grizzly Adams, but a little angrier looking. The kid was obviously surprised by my question, but he answered honestly and told me, "I'm from a small town east of this major city, and it's my first month here, and it's been a rough couple of weeks." So I asked him to go on. He went on to tell me he missed his parents and his friends, but he was dedicated to his schooling and that it was necessary for him at the time being. And I said to him, "That's it?" And just kind of left the question floating between us, and that's when he says to me, "Well, my boyfriend also broke up with me, and it's been really tough." Then he had this look of mortification on his face when he, I guess, realized he just outed himself to a stranger that he didn't know from Adam. I looked at him and I said, "Oh man, that's rough. Well, here, you were trying to leave without your tip." As I was handing him the cash, I said, "Come here, man," and opened my arms up for a hug. This kid just threw his face into my chest and hugged me back so hard that I knew in that moment it was the right thing to do. When the hug ended, not too long, not too short, I held onto his shoulders, looked him in the eyes, and told him, "It's going to be okay. You're young and feelings can be overwhelming, but keep your chin up and your nose in the books. 10 years from now, you'll have forgotten about what's his face, and you'll be happier and more successful than you can imagine now, especially if you continue to be the honest person that I think you are." Or something like that. All he said was, "Wow, thank you," and I turned around and walked back down to my driveway.
And that's when OP got on his sled and flew away back to the North Pole.
Oh my gosh. Today I found this on my door. It was a link. I clicked on the link. It's no longer there. It must have been an image of a letter. I guess it meant more to him than I realized. So it sounds like the delivery driver left him a thank you note. Has anyone else had any encounters like this? I'd love to hear about it. Edit. Holy smokes, this thread blew up while I was sleeping. I can't respond to everyone, but I'm reading all the comments. I'm glad my story touched so many of you. Full disclosure, I am by no means a perfect example of kindness, but I do my best. My life has been plagued with violence and tragedy, but it's also had its moments of pure love and joy. It's those moments that I live for. I have learned, finally, to focus on the things in my life that help me grow to be a better human being. It took me a long time. I'd like to think that's why this story happened, because I somehow grew into the man I hoped I would one day be. I am real. My life has been too real. And this story is really real. My wife and I were laughing about it last night before bed. I told her someone said I was trolling and she made some puns that were just awful, but I love her still. Thank you all for Thank you all for your kind words and shared stories. They all mean a lot to me, really. Yeah.
Top comment. Santa? Question mark.
No, I just thought that was a really, really sweet story.
Well, we've talked on this podcast before about stories where like workers, usually servers or anyone in customer service, if they're having a rough day, we're always those kind of people. We try to like, help out or like give words of encouragement, not stress too much if an order is messed up or something, or accidents happen, mistakes happen, like they're trying their best,
Right. 100%.
Show some kindness. You don't know what they're going through.
Exactly.
In this case, a lot
It was a lot. Yeah. So very, very cool.
But also they're young. They'll bounce back.
Right. Exactly.
There's so much life ahead of them.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things
doesn't feel like it in the moment, but
yeah, a lot of things that we deal with, we look back later and we're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was at the time. Like I got through it, but I like that again. Going back to the first story, it'll pass. It might pass like a kidney stone, but it'll pass. And it's one of those things that if you're going through a rough period of time, like if you keep marching forward, you'll get past it. It might hurt in the moment and it might suck, but you'll get through it. So yeah. All right, on to this last Reddit story. This is a very short one, and it goes along kind of with our news article, which is why I picked it. So here we go. This one is from Best of Positive Updates. It was originally posted in Personal Finance, and it is titled, "Help! Monthly mortgage payment went up by 42%. Yeah.
That's when those estimated. I think your escrow was doing a poor job of guessing your property taxes and stuff. We've had our mortgage go up and down. Like 1 year go up like $200, $300, and the next year go down $100. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, escrow's really trying here to guess at what our property taxes are going to be.
Exactly. So here we go. Hello, my mortgage was recently transferred to Chase this month and somehow my monthly payments went from $13.19 to $18.73. In a panic, I called Chase to figure out why my payments have gone up so drastically. They told me there was nothing I can do because my county taxes are what has gone up. Is this normal? Is there really nothing I can do about a 42% increase? I don't even know how or why the county taxes can possibly go up that suddenly. This is my first home and I'm just now coming up to being in my house for a year. So maybe I'm just green and don't understand how this works. I'm hoping someone here can either help me understand why, or if there's in fact something I can do about this, please let me know.
I feel like we lived this almost exactly. Not the specifics,
things,
but
yes.
like our first year, like, oh, our mortgage is this, and then after that first year, like, why did it go up like an extra $200, $300? Like, what on earth? And then like went back down the next year, like, oh, okay, so it's our
get refunded sometimes. Yeah. But when you're a new homeowner, there are so many things that you'll be like, oh, that's a thing, oh gosh, or like, oh, I didn't know about this, or how to do this, how do I fix a sump pump, how do I do these things,
or how do you pay your property taxes, and then you realize, oh wait, it was in my escrow already paid for it, and I got a return back from that.
There's all sorts of things that happen
that aren't necessarily intuitive.
Exactly. So okay, real quick update here. Thank you you everyone who helped me figure out what I had to do. I finally solved the issue. I called Chase and the county treasurer. It turns out Chase was grossly overestimating my property taxes.
Yep.
Bingo.
They'd go down the next year then.
Yep. They estimated my taxes to be $7,600 a year. And when I spoke with the county, they told me that my taxes would be $2,800 a year. So
Whoa.
a bit of a difference there.
So either you're gonna get a big refund check back, or your property or your mortgage the next year is gonna be
very
lot
low.
less.
So yes, my taxes did go up because they were taxing me on a bare lot last year, and this year they will be including the home. But there was a mistake on Chase's part when it came to estimating the tax amount. It probably would not have been caught had I just accepted it. Also, on a side note, I have filled out the proper paperwork to make my residence my primary residence. Thank you to everyone who suggested looking into that as well.
Ah, homesteading.
Yep, exactly. So they got a lot of suggestions from people in the comments. And this is the reason why I picked this, the story in itself is maybe not super inherently like, wow, that's so positive. But it's a perfect example of putting out there a question, because they were like, I don't know, maybe I'm just green. I don't understand these things. There's this fear of, am I just dumb? Do I just not understand how things work? Are people going to look at me and laugh with this question? By asking, he found out the answer to his question. And they also pointed out something else he didn't know that also could have gotten he would have had to pay more towards if he hadn't put it as his primary residence. So things like that, by putting out your questions, by putting out there that I don't know how this works. I'm new to this. I don't know what I'm doing. People can help you. People can figure out what you might need or might not know and give you the information or help that you might need. Even if you have to be humble about it and be like, yeah, I don't know this, and maybe I should know this, but I don't. It can be really hard, but it's oftentimes worse if we don't say something, we don't ask for help, and just suck it up and end up, if he would have just kept making the payments, I don't know. Yeah,
no, you can get some helpful advice. I would say, for specifics, I'd always be like careful with Reddit in terms of like I would research the suggestions just to be safe, because we've looked up questions for various things and gotten some interesting like answers on Reddit that we found out like, yeah, I don't think that's the case, or that's not true, so do your due diligence as
but
well.
But it can give you a good launch point to look up.
Yes, it does. It can give you a good launch point,
Like they might not have even known about the whole primary residence thing and been like, what's that? They might not have ever heard of that. And so by someone pointing that out, then they can then do their own research and be like, oh, that is a thing. Oh, I should do that. It's things like that can really, really help.
And also on the flip side, if you're somebody who's being asked questions like these or something, you do know, like, respond with that kindness of like, and respect of, well, here's the answer to those questions. Or maybe if you thought of it as not like, oh, you're stupid. Why don't you know
don't
that?
Make them feel like come dumb about it.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's things that they know about that you don't know about.
Exactly.
Everyone's got different gaps and holes in their knowledge base and their experience.
Exactly. So, yeah, and this goes along with our news article for today, which is from WPTV.com. It is titled "Rob Kenny's YouTube channel shares tips and tricks that dads often teach their children." I'm guessing a decent amount of our listeners have probably heard of this channel. I know I've at least come across it a couple times when I've been scrolling through Reels. So basically, this guy has a YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I? And it's got 4 million people that follow it right now. And
that's a couple.
Yeah, just a couple. And basically what he does is he posts videos where he starts it off saying, hey, kids, and teaches something that he wishes his dad would have taught him how to properly do as a dad. So it could be anything from how to tie a tie to installing a bathroom faucet. So it's a lot of home ownership stuff, basic things that we would assume that most people know how to do, but maybe you don't know how to tie a tie, or you don't know how to do this thing.
I see that happen a lot at weddings we film.
A lot of people are looking up those videos. I love
seeing like when it's like the room when no groomsman knows that, so they all have like different YouTube videos on and stuff. Maybe it's from this guy, I don't know.
Who knows?
Or maybe it's just like one guy that knows and does it for everybody.
Right, but everyone has little gaps and things of like, oh, I didn't know that that's the thing you're supposed to do, or I didn't know that that's how you do that. We all have things that little gaps in our knowledge in different areas that we might not even be aware that we have. And so this is a really cool way of filling those gaps in a way that you don't have to feel silly asking. You can just look it up on this YouTube channel. I think that's so cool. So yeah, he said that he even has 80-year-olds come looking for his videos and seeking advice and wanting more dad jokes, because I guess he does dad jokes in his videos.
It can't be a dad-centric channel without dad jokes.
Exactly. So to quote the article, growing up without his dad, Kenny said he wanted to use his experiences of learning things the hard way to make life easier for others. And he also teaches his followers about the emotions one may go through without a father in their life. Yeah, so I try to share forgiveness and the importance of that, If you're living in the past, it's just not beneficial, Kenny said. And there was freedom for me on the other side of forgiveness that I didn't anticipate. So very, very, very wholesome. Yeah, I just thought that was really cool. Kind of, like I said, kind of ties into the last story about not being afraid to ask questions and ask for help. And that's the great thing about having the internet these days, is now we have a lot of information at our fingertips of channels like this YouTube channel. Of course, always do your own research. Don't just believe the first thing you see or things like that. But it's a good way to possibly find answers to things that you don't know how to do or that you might be seeking help for. So lots of cool resources out there. People putting out positive content to help other people out. Very, very cool. With that, we will end today's podcast episode. Tune in next week. We're getting into Valentine's Day territory. So our next week's episode is going to be all about heartwarming love stories. It's going to be very, very sweet. I am excited to share these stories we've lined up for that. And if you have any positive stories that you would like to share, any positive news articles you've come across that you think more people should hear about, please send them to us at upliftingpositivestories@gmail.com, or you can post them on our subreddit, which is Uplift Positive Stories.
Yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And speaking of help, you can help us out by leaving a review or sharing with your friends, like you are what helps us to grow this podcast more and more. And we thank you guys so much for allowing it to grow what it is right now.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can grow it even more.
That'd be awesome. Sweet. Well, thank you guys. We hope you'll tune in next Wednesday and have a wonderful rest of your week.
And stay positive.